Beneath the ground of a modern village near Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists have uncovered something that nobody expected. Welcome to Sayburç.
In 2021, archaeologists in Turkey uncovered the oldest narrative artwork in human history. A carved limestone relief showing human figures flanked by leopards and a bull, depicting a scene, telling a story.
Wow, this is incredible how much work they've done here. When I came here, this was just a village. This was all covered underground. Look at these gigantic enclosures. Let me show you my favorite part.
The problem: it was created 4,000 years before representational human art was supposed to exist. Before Egypt, before Mesopotamia, before writing itself. And when the 2025 excavation data came back, researchers discovered something even more disturbing. The site was not a ritual center like nearby Göbekli Tepe.
Here at Sayburç in September 2025, there's been new excavations here. The whole enclosure has been properly excavated. Hopefully it's open for us to have a look at.
It was a permanent village with houses, storage pits, and grinding stones. Everything we thought we knew about the birth of civilization just collapsed. The impossible relief. The site is called Sayburç.
So it's many thousands of years younger than the special building, which is just close by. And you have to wonder, well, what did the special building look like 2,000 years ago?
It sits in southeastern Turkey's Şanlıurfa province, 35 miles from the famous Göbekli Tepe. Survey teams identified it during systematic exploration of the region, expecting to find another ritual site, another node in the network they already understood.
With the modern houses, so the 20th century houses, built on top of the special building, you can see that the special building would not have been covered up. It wouldn't have, I certainly don't think it would have been covered over with soil when the Romans were quarrying there.
Instead, they found something that defied every timeline archaeologists have constructed for human artistic development. The carved relief panel measures 3.5 meters wide by 1.5 meters tall.
The sweep of the curve, it just disappears underneath the houses on the side. So heaven knows how big that building originally was, and what remains to be excavated underneath.
Carved directly into a vertical limestone cliff face. A central human figure stands with arms raised high, holding what appears to be a rattle or ceremonial object above their head.
We look at them, they're covered in these engravings. So this is a fox, there's vultures here, there's bear, there's wild boar, and here, this one just has to be my favorite. It's a leopard.
In a gesture that communicates power, authority, perhaps connection to forces beyond the visible world. Two leopards with exaggerated male features flank the figure symmetrically.
So you get the impression of this place as being beautifully colored and textured.
Positioned like guardians or spirit animals. A massive bull stands in profile, horns clearly visible, sweeping upward like weapons. And surrounding them all, additional human figures at different scales, moving through the scene in what can only be described as a procession. This is narrative art, sequential imagery showing relationships between figures, guiding the viewer's eye through a story being told across the stone surface. The technique used to create it is called simultaneous relief. The background systematically cut away to a consistent depth of 5 to 10 centimeters, leaving figures standing proud against the recessed surface. Creating this requires planning the entire composition before removing a single chip of stone. You mark out the boundaries. You visualize how the finished piece will look. Then you spend countless hours removing background material with nothing but stone tools, maintaining consistent depth across the entire panel. The human figures show anatomical accuracy that simply should not exist for this period. Arms and legs positioned in correct proportion to bodies. Torsos with visible structure suggesting musculature. Heads rendered in profile with recognizable facial features. One figure clearly grasps an object, requiring the artist to conceive the relationship between human hand and held item, a sophisticated representational challenge that demands understanding of how objects interact with bodies in three-dimensional space. Everywhere else in the world at this time, human depiction meant stick figures scratched into cave walls, abstract symbols requiring cultural knowledge to decode, geometric shapes suggesting human forms without actually rendering them, naturalistic human figures with correct anatomical proportions do not appear in Near Eastern art until the developed traditions of Mesopotamia and Egypt, cultures that emerged roughly 4,000 years after the relief at Sayburç was carved. Yet here it was, fully realized narrative, figurative art depicting recognizable humans engaged in what appears to be a ritual or ceremonial event. Created by people who possessed no metal tools, no writing systems, no cities, no wheels, just stone implements and a creative vision that would take the rest of humanity 4 millennia to match. But here's the catch. The artwork was not the most shocking discovery at Sayburç. Not even close. Because what researchers found beneath the surface would tear apart the dominant theory of how human civilization began. If discoveries like this blow your mind, smash that subscribe button. We dig up buried history every week. Now let me show you what the excavations actually found. The theory. Everyone believed. When survey teams first identified Sayburç in 2021, everyone assumed it would slot neatly into an existing framework that had dominated archaeological thinking for 3 decades. That framework was built entirely around one site, Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe has dominated every conversation about the origins of civilization since its discovery. Picture massive T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons each, arranged in precise circular formations with radial symmetry. Imagine intricate carvings of snakes coiling around columns, foxes frozen in mid-leap, scorpions with raised tails, wild boars with bristling backs, all covering surfaces that were deliberately buried 11,000 years ago. Consider the labor required to quarry these pillars from bedrock, carve them into distinctive shapes, transport them to the site, and erect them vertically in prepared pits.
And yet, this incredible feat of architecture is not the most revolutionary thing about this place.
Hundreds of workers for each pillar, coordinated by some authority we still do not understand. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first excavated the site in the 1990s, it rewrote the textbooks overnight. Here was monumental architecture built by people who had not yet invented agriculture, permanent settlements, or any of the social infrastructure we associate with complex societies. How was this possible? The Göbekli Tepe model emerged to answer that question, and it became gospel. Religion came first. Ritual came first. Nomadic peoples gathered at sacred sites for ceremonies, built these impossible structures during their gatherings, then dispersed back into the wilderness to resume hunting and foraging. The desire to worship, to connect with forces beyond the material world, was the engine that drove human development. First the temple, then the city. First the priest, then the farmer. Spirituality created civilization. Critically, after decades of excavation by multiple international teams, Göbekli Tepe showed no evidence of permanent settlement. No houses where families lived. No domestic structures with cooking areas. No storage facilities for preserving food. No hearths blackened by years of cooking fires. No grinding stones worn smooth by generations of flour preparation. Nothing indicating people actually lived there year-round. This absence was central to the entire theory. No settlement evidence meant ritual gatherings only. Nomads built the site, worshipped there periodically, and moved on. The model held. It was taught in universities worldwide, featured in countless documentaries, cited in hundreds of academic papers. It seemed to answer one of the deepest questions about our species. Sayburç was supposed to be another node in this network, another ritual center, another piece confirming the same elegant puzzle. The 2025 excavations proved otherwise, and the implications were devastating. The village that broke the model. Dr. Ilham Özdoğan, the lead archaeologist on the Sayburç project, remembers the exact moment the settlement data came together. Her team had gathered in the field tent after another long day of excavation. Laptops open, artifact distributions mapped across the excavation grid. The patterns forming on their screens were unmistakable and impossible. We kept checking the data, she later recalled, running the analysis again, comparing to other sites. We thought there had to be contamination, some mixing of layers, something wrong with our methodology, because what we were seeing was not supposed to be here, not at this date, not in this region, not at a site everyone assumed was a ritual center. What they found was settlement, clear, undeniable, extensive evidence of permanent human habitation. Rectangular stone foundations with interior features including hearths and storage areas. These were not specialized ritual buildings designed for periodic ceremonies. They were houses, places where people cooked meals over wood fires, made tools from stone and bone, slept through cold winters huddled together for warmth, raised children who played in the same dirt their grandchildren would walk upon. The architecture spoke of permanence, of intention, of people who planned to stay. Artifact distributions within the structures revealed the spatial organization of domestic life in extraordinary detail. Food preparation areas clustered near hearths, scattered with animal bones showing butchering marks and plant remains from meals consumed millennia ago.
Archaeologists discovered mysterious, ancient constructions left behind by someone else at a site known as Göbekli Tepe.
Tool manufacturing locations marked by distinctive patterns of stone debris from knapping, where people made the implements they needed to hunt, to process food, to survive. Storage zones containing preserved botanical remains, seeds, and grain fragments, telling researchers exactly what these ancient people ate and how they prepared it. But here's the catch. The structures did not scatter randomly across the landscape. They clustered together in what appeared to be a planned village layout. Houses arranged with deliberate access paths between them. Shared communal spaces where multiple families could gather. Evidence of coordination in where to build, how to orient structures, how to organize shared resources. This required complex communication between groups, shared purpose extending beyond individual families, social organization of a kind that supposedly emerged only much later in human development. The grinding stones were particularly damning to the old model. Large flat stones with handheld grinders, surfaces worn smooth from countless hours of processing cereals into flour. This labor-intensive work makes sense only for sedentary populations with reliable, predictable food supplies. They could count on season after season. Nomadic hunter-gatherers do not haul heavy grinding equipment across vast landscapes. They do not invest hours processing grain into flour unless they are staying in one place long enough to make that exhausting investment worthwhile. The presence of these stones was a declaration of permanence carved in wear patterns. Storage pits containing charred seeds and grain fragments revealed surplus management, perhaps the most significant indicator of all. These people harvested more than they immediately needed, stored it in carefully prepared underground facilities, accessed it over weeks and months rather than consuming everything at once. This is not survival day to day. This is planning. This is investment in a future they believed would arrive. This is the foundation of agricultural civilization, appearing fully formed at the very beginning of the Neolithic transition. Contemporaneous with Göbekli Tepe, not millennia after it as the dominant theory required. Parallel worlds. The 2025 systematic comparison between Sayburç and Göbekli Tepe revealed something nobody had anticipated and nobody wanted to accept. These were not variations within a single culture adapting to different circumstances. They were completely different civilizations pursuing completely different visions of human society. Both sites date to approximately the same period. Radiocarbon analysis confirms it beyond reasonable doubt. They sit 35 miles apart, close enough that a person could walk between them in a single day of travel, close enough that the inhabitants almost certainly knew the other site existed, perhaps even visited it, perhaps even included some of the same individuals moving between communities. Yet everything about the two sites diverges in fundamental ways that reveal completely different worldviews. Architecture tells the first story of difference. Göbekli Tepe features circular enclosures with massive freestanding pillars. Arranged in concentric rings, abstract geometric design imposed upon the landscape with mathematical precision. The pillars were quarried, carved, transported, and erected through coordinated labor mobilization, involving perhaps hundreds of workers. This is monumental construction designed to impress, to dominate, to demonstrate power over stone and space. Sayburç shows rectangular domestic structures built partially against natural rock formations, with stone benches carved directly from bedrock and integrated into living spaces. Buildings oriented to natural topography rather than imposed geometric patterns. Architecture working with the land rather than conquering it. Different organizing principles entirely.
After all, it was built in the Stone Age, long before the invention of metal tools, even before the development of farming.
Art tells the second story. Göbekli Tepe focuses almost exclusively on animal imagery. Snakes coiling around pillars, foxes frozen in mid-leap, scorpions with raised stingers, wild boars with bristling backs, birds of prey with spreading wings. Human figures appear rarely, and when they do, they manifest as abstractions. The T-shaped pillars themselves may represent stylized humans, the horizontal top suggesting a head, the vertical shaft a body, but they remain geometric symbols rather than naturalistic depictions. At Sayburç, recognizable human figures dominate the imagery, engaged in activities, surrounded by animals in narrative relationships that tell stories rather than display isolated symbols. Human experience at the center, not animal power. Even shared motifs reveal fundamental divergence. Leopards appear at both sites. At Göbekli Tepe, they function as decorative elements carved on pillars as part of symbolic programs we cannot decode. Isolated figures without clear relationship to other imagery. At Sayburç, the same animals are integrated into compositional narrative, positioned symmetrically flanking the central human figure, communicating relationship, hierarchy, meaning that viewers can intuitively grasp without cultural context. But here is the catch. If both civilizations existed simultaneously in the same region, the linear model of human development collapses entirely. Religion did not come before settlement. Ritual did not precede agriculture. Monuments did not predate houses. These were parallel developments representing different cultural choices, different values, different answers to the same fundamental questions about how humans should organize their lives and communities. Some groups created monumental ritual centers without settling permanently. They gathered, built, worshipped, and dispersed. Their monuments became their legacy, not permanent homes. Other groups settled into permanent villages and created ritual monuments within their communities. They stayed. They invested in place. They built for generations rather than gatherings. Two paths emerging simultaneously from the Stone Age. Two ways of being human in a world that offered more possibilities than any simple model can contain. And both successful enough to leave traces that would survive 11 millennia, waiting beneath Turkish soil for someone to finally ask the right questions. The question that haunted Dr. Özdoğan's team was not which path was better or more advanced. It was simpler and more troubling. How did we miss this for so long? How did decades of research construct a model of human development that could not accommodate what Sayburç so clearly demonstrates? The answer reveals as much about modern archaeology as it does about ancient peoples. We found what we expected to find. We built theories around single, spectacular sites. And we forgot that human beings have always been more creative, more diverse, and more surprising than any simple narrative can contain. The theory that crumbles. The conventional Neolithic narrative has become almost mythological in its elegant simplicity. Nomadic hunter-gatherers built ritual centers first.
So, how is it there? It is a confounding discovery that is rocking the very foundations of what we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. Who really built Göbekli Tepe, and what was its true purpose?
These sacred sites encouraged repeated return to favorable locations, where food was abundant and spirits were present. Repeated return led to semi-sedentary lifestyles, where people stayed longer in one place between hunts. Semi-sedentary lifestyles led to deliberate cultivation of plants growing near their temporary camps. And cultivation finally produced permanent agricultural villages where true civilization could begin its long development. Religion before agriculture, ritual before settlement, monuments before houses, the spiritual impulse driving material progress. Sayburç proves this elegant sequence cannot possibly be the whole story. Permanent settlement was not the end point of ritual gathering, a destination reached after millennia of gradual transition. It happened at the same time, in the same region, among people who could walk to each other's sites in a single day, perhaps involving some of the same individuals moving between communities, participating in both ways of life. Pre-pottery Neolithic Anatolia was not a single culture gradually evolving along one predetermined track toward civilization as we know it. It was a diverse landscape of different peoples making radically different choices about how to live, experimenting with different social structures, creating different artistic traditions, pursuing different paths into a future none of them could have predicted or controlled. Messier than the old narrative, harder to teach in classrooms, harder to fit into simple models of inevitable human progress, but far more accurate to the evidence and far more true to the complexity of being human. Frozen in stone. The limestone cliff at Sayburç still stands, weathered by 11,000 years of wind and rain, but still legible. The recessed background, carved by stone tools over countless hours of patient labor. The figures emerging from rock as if they had always been there, waiting across unimaginable spans of time to be seen again. The central figure still holds their rattle aloft. The leopards still guard their flanks with ancient vigilance. The bull stands in eternal profile, horns pointing toward a sky unchanged since the Neolithic. The other figures still process through the scene, frozen in a gesture that has outlasted every empire, every language, every god we still worship today. We do not know their names. We do not know what ceremony they depicted or what meaning it held. We do not know the words they spoke as they gathered before this image in flickering firelight, 11,000 years before anyone would see it again. But we know this: they decided to tell a story, and they succeeded. So what do you think? Was Sayburç a completely separate civilization from Göbekli Tepe? Or were these the same people living radically different lives at different sites? Drop your theory in the comments. If you want more history that rewrites the textbooks, smash that like button and subscribe. We dig up buried mysteries every single week. See you in the next one.